have you looked me in the eye and truly seen what was there? Not who you are, but who am I? How many times have you judged me in your mind, called me names, clipped my wings so I wouldn't fly? People are just people, we are yearning to be free. All the broken-hearted heroes will go down in history. I know we can't stop fighting, although it takes a toll. We are stronger than an army, stronger as a whole. Come out from the darkness to the day. Be proud, we are beautiful this way. Come out from the darkness to the day. Be proud, we are beautiful this way. How many times will we need to say goodbye to the ones we love the most and hear the rivers cry? How many times will it take for you to see that there's room for both of us? It's not just you or me. People are just people, we are trying to be free. And all the broken-hearted heroes are going down in history. We won't stop fighting, fighting for what's right. We are wider than the ocean, bolder than the light. Come out from the darkness to the day. Be proud, we are beautiful this way. Come out from the darkness to the day. Come be proud, we are beautiful this way. Come out from the darkness to the day. Be proud, we are beautiful this way. Come out from the darkness to the day. Come be proud, we are beautiful this way.
All right. Hey, good morning, good afternoon, or good evening, wherever you may be in this beautiful, transformative planet of ours. This is Metaphysical Mocha Mondays here on the Intuitive Prospector page. Happy Monday morning to you. It is President's Day here in the United States. So it's a federal holiday. So if you work for the federal government or in banking, then you have today off. So welcome, welcome, welcome. Thanks for joining me today. Looks like we're broadcasting okay. Sometimes you never know with Zoom. You never know how that's gonna work out. So grab your coffee, grab your tea. I don't need to be recording this, and I'm not sure why. Just means I need more coffee. So grab your coffee, grab your tea. Join me here in the Zoom room on the Intuitive Prospector page, as we're going to be talking about Pluto today. I was going to talk about something else based on my meditations. I get up in the morning, I do a little meditation, kind of tune into the consciousness, what's going on in our world. And, you know, for some of you that have been following my work, you know, I've been talking for a couple of years now about the breakdown of society. Try not to be a doom and gloomy here or fear mongering, especially this early in the morning. But, you know, for a few years, I've talked about how the United States over the last few years has really challenged its current status quo, if you will. I've talked about a national divorce, possible civil war. our politics, the transformation of democracy. And, I've also talked about the great coming together from all of this. And what is taking place in just a few days on the 22nd. So today is the 21st of February. So on I guess that's tomorrow, 2/22/22, we're going to see Pluto. And if you follow astrology, like I do, I'm not an expert in astrology by no means, but it is one of the many tools that I look at, because the universe has many ways of talking to us. We think, when things are talking to us, it has to come in the form of a vibration off a vocal cord. And in my journey, in my spiritual journey, I have realized that the universe has a voice, but it comes through different means, whether that's astrology. Some of you may read your horoscope, the tarot, the oracle decks. I use numerology as a numerologist because of the history and the fascination of numbers and mathematics. And as we move into 2/22/22, Pluto is making its way back to us. And it takes, from an astrology standpoint, it takes about 248 years to have that external planet on all the way out in our galaxy, in our solar system. It takes that 248 years to transverse all the 12 signs. And so Pluto's return tomorrow is known as, how can I say this? It's known as the planet of death, rebirth, reckoning with deep-seated trauma. And it's about to return to the same degree that it was in 248 years ago. We were actually in the period of the American Revolutionary War. It was right around July 4th, 1776, which we would, acknowledge from a historical standpoint, the birth of the United States to be united. So history, if you're a fan of history or a student of history like myself, I always go back and I look at periods. In fact, a couple people reached out to me and said, hey, with what's going on with Ukraine, watching that. If you don't know a lot about Ukraine, I would say, educate, learn, research like I did, prospect, to understand that this time frame is very similar to the 1930s. And somebody had asked me, said, when the Olympics are over, does wars break out? And there tends to be a pattern. Now, World War II didn't start for a few years after the Olympics in Germany. It wasn't until 39 that Germany invaded Poland. And we, at the time, as the United States, we were very, what history would classify as a isolationist nation, based on politics, not wanting to get in Europe's conflict. And then it was only 2 years later that we were pulled into World War II because Japan in 41 attacked us based on resources and oil. And we have to pay attention, because people are saying, well, that's clear across the planet. That's on the other side of the planet. That's true, but we are so connected today that this conflict could lead us to another global war, based on resources, based on territory, based on authoritarianism versus democracy. So we're seeing a lot of things building up, and that's just not even just the world, but what's been going on with this pandemic. What's been going on with our politics here in the United States. I know some of you that follow my work, I've been talking about this for a couple years. I do believe that we only have maybe 1 or 2 elections, free and fair elections, left in the United States before there's a transformation of the states, democracy, authoritarianism. And at the time when I was talking about this, back in 2019, when the age of Aquarius, based on astrology, was telling us that this would be a decade, the Roaring 20s would be a decade of great transformations, a great decade of change. And that's when I started to, through my meditations, through my dreams, through my connection to the work that I do as a spiritualist, that's when I realized that the transformations of our country were going to take place. And then, of course, we've got the elections, we've got the politics, we got the pandemic. But as one thing ends, like this pandemic is starting, we are showing very positive signs. I work in healthcare at the federal level, and we're seeing very positive signs of the death rate starting to come down, the case exposure rate coming down, and to I would predict by April, I'd forecast for April, maybe May, that this pandemic will now start to shift into an endemic. So things are going to start going back to whatever this new normal is, including mask mandates. I hope people get vaccinated and boosted. That'll be probably part of our society moving forward from a healthcare standpoint, just like we did for smallpox, just like we did for polio. But what is going to change is the dynamics of government, dynamics of our state, dynamics of people's ideologies and people that support science. I always say believe in the science, and then people that believe in anti-science. And that's just kind of where we're going. And that is, that is the planet of Pluto moving into the 27th degree of Capricorn. And that, this goes all the way back. You can track it not back just to the Revolutionary War. You can track it back to major points in English history, the Golden Age. You can go back to, we're going to go through this Pluto until 2024. The period is from 2008 to 2024, but it actually comes into the same degree tomorrow that it did when we signed the Declaration of Independence. And it's just something to watch. It doesn't mean that everything is going to happen the same way. That history doesn't repeat itself the exact same way, but history does have a rhyme and a rhythm and a pattern, as Mark Twain talked about. So in the years ahead, we'll see some economic outcomes. This is going to be, I don't think it's going to be like the Great Depression of the 1930s by any means, but we'll see that there's going to be just transformation and change now that Pluto's coming back. I've been kind of holding off talking about this because I always like to try to inspire and motivate and encourage, and that's what this show is about. So if you follow the show and you're just tuning in, it's really about how you look at how everything is going to, if Russia decides to attack Ukraine, we can't change that. And if it leads to a world war, a global war, or World War III, we can't change that. But what we can do is we can change how we respond to things and how we get active in prayer and meditation, maybe volunteering, praying for peace. We've got a history of war. It's like J.R.R. Tolkien, who wrote The Ring, said, if we don't end wars, wars will eventually end us. And there's a lot of truth to that, unfortunately. So tomorrow, Pluto will start to expose the shadow side of our country. It's already starting to do that. The negative patterns that we've seen from both racial and economic disparities, Black Lives Matters, Supreme Court justices, politics, whether you're in the Biden house or the Trump house, it's going to get a little bit more intense, and it's going to definitely start to change the landscape of our country. And it's also going to start to bring forth this transformative time. We can just, there's going to be a lot of things that are going to be exposed from, major people, actors, famous people, religious people. Things are going to start to really come into the light. And through this, I always say, a crack is where the light comes in. And as we're cracking, I do believe that that's where the light will start to shine and come through. And not everybody's going to agree with everything that I'm saying or with everything that goes on, but that's not for history to judge. History is for us to learn. And we'll look back at this period with eyes wide open about how awakening this journey has been in the last few years. We've witnessed a collective awakening of people grouping together to address, power imbalances, rich versus old, homeless versus people that have a home, racial injustice, systemic racism, white supremacy that's out there. It's come back. It's always been a part of our country, but it has really come out back into the landscape. Even how the states operate, just the ideologies. To this COVID, how people believed in masks, people don't believe in masks, people believe in vaccinations, people don't believe in vaccinations. But that, through all of those significant changes in those historical moments, it's going to create a movement. I said 3 years ago that we're not going back to normal. Normal wasn't working for many then, and it's definitely not working for many now. And that's transformation. And it really is about we the people and identifying as a constitution. I'm a constitutionalist. I don't get into the politics of stuff, but believing in what the Constitution is, to defend democracy, because there seems to be a fight even around the world. Capitalism, democracy, authoritarianism, oligarchy. These things are all taking place, and if you're not familiar with that, you may want to start researching that, because at some point it's going to impact your life. It's kind of like when somebody asked me, how would you define, with the racial tensions of our country, and what's been lurking below the surface has been part of this democratic facade that we live in. And somebody said, well, how do you speak of racial injustices? I can't actually put myself in shoes of somebody of color, somebody that's black or brown or yellow, especially as a white male, but I can identify and realize that when you have injustices, when you have a rule of law and they're not being followed, people rise up. And white privilege, somebody asked me, I had a great conversation, because I want to learn, I want to understand, I don't want to offend or be ignorant of some of the words I say or some of the things I say on my shows, on my radio show. And white privilege is something that doesn't impact you until it does, and that's white privilege. And I've got a lot of friends that are of color, that are black. I'm an ally of the gay community, and this is a time in our history when we are going to recognize, and some people don't want to recognize, and that's okay. But with with Pluto coming around, and again, the planet Pluto is represented by death, rebirth, reckoning, and deep-seated trauma. And the last few years, all of us have gone through our own format of deep-seated trauma, whether it's racial, the pandemic, politics, family, mental health. The planet showed us what she's capable of healing herself when humans go off grid, like we did for almost a year, and how quickly she could reheal. And you can see the Himalayan mountains in India, and you got dolphins swimming in the canal in Venice. Mother Earth is alive. And I posted on my page talking about how science is showing, just like if you think Pandora from the planet, or from the movie Avatar, our planet is alive. Gaia has been talking about this for 20 years, about how the planet is alive, and if we don't start paying attention to it, we are renters of the planet. Mother Earth is the landlord, we are the tenants, and we can be evicted anytime. So as Pluto comes around, if you just do your own research, but there are certain points in history when Pluto has come around to the 27th degree, which it's about to do. And again, going back to the Revolutionary War, the fall of Rome, great times in the British Empire, how things started, the Golden Age, how the country joined. So it's very interesting. If you're not, and I know everybody that follows this page or my work or my shows doesn't follow astrology, but I would check it out, just for the fact that the universe presence has a way of talking to us, and it has a voice. It's just not the voice that you're anticipating. And that's, I'd say, over the, on my journey, that's what I've understood about. Sometimes I think we live in the matrix. Some of the things that I see, I say something, or I see something, and then of course it comes into my reality, a day later. But I've learned that the universe has a voice, and that voice is based on tools, whether it's astrology, whether it's numerology, whether it's, I use the oracle decks. I don't use the tarot, but I do work with the oracle decks, and I follow just to see how history lines up with what's going on. And this whole Russia-Ukraine thing shouldn't even be taking place based on the country's stability, but it is. And it's like, okay, what's going to unfold? I stand and I pray with the people of Ukraine. They're an industrial nation. If you haven't seen what this country, the size of this country is, I did a little bit of research. I posted that. Maybe I'll post it on the Intuitive Prospector page. I did it on my personal page, but I learned a lot about what Ukraine is and what they bring to the world. And this whole situation is very similar to the mid-1930s, when Germany started to rise to power and Hitler invaded Poland when they told him not to, and he did. And that started the European War. And again, people say, well, that's Europe's problem, not our problem. Well, yeah, it eventually will be our problem, just like World War II when we got pulled in Pearl Harbor. So think about the world, how globally we are connected, and do a little research about, you pray for peace, pray that we don't have another war, because we just got out of a big war after 20 years, especially here in the United States. But it just seems like we cannot find our peace. We just seem to go and look for the next power grab or control, and it's not going to work the same way. People are too connected, informed, educated, and will rebel, will rise up. And I hope that's not the case. I always pray for peace and love. But what I'm experiencing as this Pluto returns to this degree, go back and check my past shows. I was talking about this back in 2020. I was talking about the great coming together after 2024, because that's when Pluto, that cycle of ends in 2024. So we have 2 more years of this kind of uncertainty, instability, this infighting, this divide. I'm not a fan of it. I don't support it. I don't get into politics. People have negative comments that they say, even when I'm trying to be positive and inspire and help people to say, hey, look at the broader picture and see what's going to happen. And of course, people are going to say at the time, you're either crazy or I'm going to call you for advice, is what I tell people. But here we are. And this is nothing new to me. But I can tell you, looking ahead and forecasting ahead, that I'm going to stick by the great coming together. And if that means that there's a world war, if that means that there's a civil war or a national divorce here in the United States, or our elections no longer take place in democracy and the Constitution no longer have a foothold here in the United States, that's going to happen. I can't change that. But at the same time, when I talked about this 2-3 years ago, through all this, I still see a great coming together. I see a great positive movement where people say enough of the injustices, the lack of equality for everybody, the lack of love for everybody, the judgment, the opinions, the racism, the systemic racism. It's just interesting, all the things that have taken place in the last few years, changing of school names, looking at our history a little bit more closely, from Black Wall Street in Oklahoma, the decimation and the history of that, to having Juneteenth as a federal holiday, taking down statues from the Confederate era, just a lot of observation, a lot of looking at ourselves to say, what kind of country do we want to be moving forward? And that's what Pluto does. That's what the planet of Pluto shows us. It's literally, like I said, it's literally, this period is known as, if you were to describe Pluto from an astrology standpoint, you can go look this up and talk to any astrologist. I'm not an astrologist. It's one of the things that I follow. It's transformation, it's death, it's regeneration, it's rebirth, it's pitfalls, it's potentials of power, it's confronting shadow issues, and so on. And that's what this year is going to be. And of course, we want to, always blame our leaders, which rightfully so. When you're a leader, you have to take that, you got to take that ridicule, regardless of what party you're affiliated with. But these are the things that are changing, including politics, including parties. And again, I don't see maybe 1 or 2 more elections in the United States before things really change. I'd be surprised if the election of 2024 actually went through, because 2024 will be the last year that Pluto has us in this really transformative time. And it goes back to what I said, that the roaring 20s were going to be very transformative, and transformation is not comfortable for people. It's like a caterpillar becoming the butterfly and going through the cocoon phase. So I thought I'd just share that with you. We're going to get ready for the what am I going to call it today? We'll call it maybe the Metaphysical Cafe or the Spiritual Cafe, but we'll get ready here in a few minutes. Let my team get ready. Good morning to my team. May have a special guest drop in, never know with what we do in the cafe, but I'm either the Spiritualist Cafe or the Metaphysical Cafe, because I want to continue talking about the tools of the universe, things that are happening with the James Webb Telescope, about to give us pull the curtain back, if you will, of our universe in a way that we have never seen before. Today is 60 years ago. We were just orbiting the planet for the first time. I'm drawing a blank on his name, and I just posted this on my Soul Adventures page. Give me a second here, while I'm thinking of that. Oh my goodness, how can I forget that? So on my Soul Adventures page, 60 years ago today, February, well, I guess it's yesterday, February 20th, which would be today if you went back 60 years. We had John Glenn. God, how can I forget that name? Our American hero, first American to orbit 60 years ago today. Think about our transformations and where we've gone 60 years, February 20th, 1962, 60 years ago today. So again, it would be one day ahead because it's the 21st. Think of what we've gone through in 60 years. Imagine what 60 years from now, if we don't implode, if we can work through our aggressions, our anger, our technology, look at where we can go in 60 years. We have SpaceX, we have Blue Origin, we have corporate taking people, private entities taking people into space. William Shatner, Captain Kirk went into space for God's sakes. How cool is that? And the James Webb Telescope is going to reveal this summer a lot of stuff about who we are in this universe, how big the universe is, that we're not alone in this universe. I know people, say put on your tinfoil hat, but why is it that one of the longest conspiracies in our history has been documented from thousands of years ago, have always talked about higher interdimensional extraterrestrial beings being a part of Earth that have always been here. If you're a big Ancient Aliens fan like I am, I watch the show. They look at the science, they look at the history. The indigenous people have been storytelling long before writing. The Native American cultures were storytelling about these beings from the stars. And wouldn't it be something if the James Webb Telescope pulls that curtain back and allows us to see, yes, there is life, and how transformative down here on the planet would that be? I don't know. I hope to be a part of that. I hope to witness it and observe that, but that's going to play right into the transformational period of the Roaring 20s, where 60 years from now, when we are in space and traveling to the moon and to Mars at some capacity, they'll look back at this Roaring 20s and say, wow, that was quite eye-opening and transformative. And again, working through our technology, our social media, that's any species has to work through that, or they implode and you go back to medieval times. And I hope that we don't go back to medieval times. So a couple of things to note before we get ready for the cafe. Get your questions ready over there. Next Monday, there won't be a show. I'll actually be traveling as we get back to this new normal. I'm actually traveling. I have 2 trips coming up. So I might do a nighttime version of Metaphysical Mocha Mondays from live from Tampa, Florida. I'll be in Tampa. And then the week after, I'll be in Vegas. So I'm going to be doing some traveling. Just for those that are attending the event in May, we have a 4-day workshop taking place here in Seattle. That event is now sold out, and I have a wait list with Paul Jacobs, who's going to, I just talked to him, and he's going to, pending his visa, he's going to travel here in late May. So I have a wait list if you want to get on that wait list for a 4-day workshop working on mediumship and really the connection to psychic mediumship, spirituality. Paul's a great teacher. He teaches at the Arthur Findlay College, been a tutor for years and years. And I'm excited that he can, have the ability to travel here safely. And we're going to have the event. If for some reason it changes, we can always, change over to Zoom. We have that digital transformation now, the ability to do that. There are going to be tickets available for the Saturday night demonstration. If you go to marclainhart.com on the events tab, you can get those seats and tickets for a demonstration of mediumship where you'll get to see Paul demonstrate. I'm honored and humbled to be kind of the opening for him on the stage. And but that workshop is sold out, and he is planning on traveling here in May. So I'm looking forward to hosting him here in Seattle. It'll be his first time to Seattle. And again, if you want to learn or just see mediumship, live, then get those tickets for, I think it's Saturday, May 21st. It's on my site at marclainhart.com. And then if you want to get on the wait list, because there always usually is a few seats where people can't make it or something's come up. So if you want to get on that wait list, please do so, because the event now is sold out. Do you want to give a shout out? As I said, I would start doing. I have 3 Patreon prospectors now. I am just doing my shows here on Facebook and then over on YouTube, but you can always follow me on Patreon. So Patreon is a new platform where I'm working and doing classes and meditations and more conversations like this, sound baths, and that's going to be for my members only. So I want to give a shout out to 3 of my Patreon prospectors that have joined, and that's part of you join, you get a shout out and you get special priorities to the radio show, to the readings, to Bill Lynn, to Christina Kerr, to Kirsty Chandler. Those are three of my prospectors. So I'm happy to have you aboard, and we'll have a lot of fun in the months ahead for 2022. Again, you can always go to marclainhart.com, and from there you can click on the radio show, The Global Player. I will be back on the air this Wednesday. Going to be doing a very inspirational show. It's called The Shallow River. It's about dealing with inspiration when you have terminal illness, and a gentleman wrote this book about his wife, and so we're going to be talking about that in detail, and that post will come out here on the Inspired Living Radio and Podcast Facebook page and our other social media accounts if you want to follow that. So that'll be live on the air. You can always follow me over on TikTok live, Clubhouse, Insight Timer, Learn It Live, my Spiritual Takeout, which is part of my Patreon prospectors, and YouTube. So lots of ways if you're interested in visiting my development circle. It's a private closed circle, but if you are interested in wanting to go deeper in your spiritual journey, mediumship, psychic, awareness, intuition, healing, transformations, just send me an email, and that's at my main page of marclainhart.com as well. And we'll give you a visitor's pass to come into the Zoom room. And those are Wednesdays at 5:15 Pacific Standard Time if you are interested. So with that, buckle up. You know, I wish I could say that it's going to get easier and better. It's not. It's going to get more intense and more transformative. And, you know, it comes back to a quote, and I'll kind of finish up here. Abigail Adams talked about this, where she talked about great difficulties may be surmounted by patience and perseverance. So if we're patient and we persevere, we will get through this. I hope that we do it together. I hope that, you know, that we stay positive, and that we avoid war. Again, like J.R.R. Tolkien, who wrote the Ring series, if you follow Lords of the Ring like I do, and a big sci-fi fan, he talked about all the time, because he was part of World War I. If you know his history before he started writing, a lot of his writings are based from World War I. And he talked about if we don't end wars will eventually end us. And I don't think any of us want that, including what's currently going on the other side of the world with Russia and Ukraine and NATO. But great difficulties may be surmounted by patience and perseverance. That's Abigail Adams. She was the, if you know Abigail Adams from history, she was the first lady of President John Adams. So again, going through the time of what they saw from, you know, the beginning and the birth of the United States, hundreds of years later to where we're at and what we're going through now, with all the different opinions and social media and divide. But I believe in us. I believe that we can be better humans. I believe in science. I believe in medicine. I believe in a future that is bright if we work together and we have that great coming together, and that we can pull through this, because the alternative is, I don't want the alternative, and I don't think anybody else wants those as well. So thanks for joining me this morning. I hope you're enjoying your coffee or your tea, or maybe it's a protein shake or whatever that may be. But I'll be back next Monday. I'll see if I can do a nighttime show of Metaphysical Mocha Monday. So for my team, I'll be on the same time zone as some of you. And if you want to help out, if not, no problem. But I'm going to be at 30,000 feet this time next Monday, traveling for my day job to Tampa, Florida. And then I'll do a couple live shows on TikTok Live and Clubhouse and YouTube Live from there, from Vegas. And if you want to interact with me, again, or if you want to book a reading, go to marclainhart.com, internet search the Intuitive Prospector. I'm easily found. Sometimes I don't want to be found based on everything that's been going on. But I hope that you're doing well, that you're staying safe, and that you look for the positive in what's coming ahead. Suffering our past and projecting to our future doesn't help us. It's about the magic in the moment. And I'll get ready for the cafe. I don't know, should I call it the Metaphysical Cafe or the Spiritual Cafe? Maybe we'll go spiritual. So if you have a question, or you know, you want to continue about the conversation about Pluto and what's going on with Pluto that moves into the 27th degree starting tomorrow, which is going to bring some very intense rebirth, death, reckoning, deep-seated traumas, exposure that we need to be ready for. And again, it's forecasting. Is it going to always be 100% right? No, nobody's ever 100% right. But if you go back to the work that I talked about, what I see now 3 years ago, you'll understand how some of this works, because I'm listening to the universe based on meditations. And again, the universe can be a vibration. it can be a big booming voice from the sky, as religions talk about and scriptures talk about. But it's more of paying attention to the astrology, paying attention to the numerology, paying attention to tarot, oracle, horoscopes, whatever that may be, your own intuition, not what somebody says. So the universe has a voice. The question is, are you listening? So have a great rest of your day. Buckle up as Pluto moves into the 27th degree and has moved through all the houses. And it's going to be a very transformative 2 more years until 2024. So with that, let's play the happy song going out. I'll get ready for the cafe. Thanks for tuning in. And again, hope you'll join me moving forward in the weeks and months ahead, whether it's Metaphysical Mocha Monday, Inspired Living Radio and podcasts. I think that's all I had. Okay, I'll see you guys over here in the cafe in just a few minutes. Have a great rest of your day, everybody. Until our next soul adventure together, dare to dream, dare to explore, dare to live, and discover that diamond within. And most importantly, stay positive, be kind, be compassionate, be caring for your fellow human. And let's change this. Let's change what's going on in the world, and let's make a positive vibration moving forward, because I do believe that we can make that change together. In the many outweigh the few. So have a great rest of your day. Namaste. Cheers.
One planet, 7.3 billion people, only one you. Life offers us many opportunities and learning experiences. Are you ready to explore and discover this beautiful planet, the life and energy all around us, the spiritual world, and what is unseen, along with your own personal soul adventure? Marc Lainhart, the Intuitive Prospector, is the spiritual connection you have been prospecting for. Internationally known as a tested and professional clairvoyant medium and spiritual advisor, Marc's work as a metaphysical teacher, medical instructor, radio show host, inspirational writer, and hiking guide are here to help you on a journey of self-discovery, healing, inspiration, education, and a whole lot of spiritual awesomeness. Dare to dream, dare to explore, dare to live. For more information on Marc's spiritual practice in Seattle, Washington, please visit marclainhart.com or internet search The Intuitive Prospector.